2 years jury selection is set to begin this morning in the trial of R. Kelly in New York. Now, the 54-year-old R&B singer is facing federal racketeering charges of abusing and exploiting girls. Now, there are many facets to this case, and joining us now to discuss them is our justice correspondent, Candace Kelley. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Candace, there's a lot to cover here. So let's just start off by talking about this jury selection. What are the types of topics that both the prosecution and the defense wanted to make sure they explored on the jury questionnaire that they had in place while picking these jury members?
Well, these potential jury members, they got this questionnaire back in January, 22 pages, which probably takes about a couple of hours to answer, but they were asked questions about STDs, certainly how they feel about R. Kelly, certainly what movies, TV shows they watch. What the defense team couldn't get in is whether or not they had particularly liked maybe surviving R. Kelly, or if they liked a particular article. In other words, gone on social media and put a thumbs up or like or something of that nature. So there are a couple of things that they just wanted to make sure that they got in. Certainly they want to know if these are R. Kelly fans that we are dealing with potentially. Of course, that doesn't get them out of it altogether, but they did want to find out specifics. And I thought it was interesting that they wanted to find out about STDs, and they were asked personal questions too. Have they had STDs, or any personal members of their family, have they had them? So there were some uncomfortable questions. Me Too movement, questions about that were also asked to make sure that they could serve and be impartial jurors.
And you mentioning those STD questions, there are additional questions that Kelly's attorneys want to ask that have to do with various types of sexual relationships as well. So what do you know about that aspect, and what are they trying to get out of that?
Well, I think that the defense team and the prosecution team, they want to know how they feel about homosexual relationships because of a couple of reasons. One, many of the young women said that they were forced to engage in sexual relationships with other women. And then we have the situation recently where R. Kelly is accused of having sex with a young boy. And this was something that his attorneys were trying to prevent putting in here, but that's going to make the cut, and they will hear about those details. So just whether or not they have any phobias, fears, issues, problems with a sexual relationship, having to do with same sex. Are they against it? Are they for it? Whatever it is, they want to make sure they got it out to, again, make sure that they could serve as an impartial juror.
And what do you make about Kelly's latest appearance in court, where he was asked, he talked about getting new clothing and not having any money?
Yeah, this was a really interesting appearance. Normally you hear about maybe an attorney that somebody wants off the case, or evidence that somebody wants suppressed. But this time when we saw R. Kelly in court, and this was just last week, we heard about the fact that he had gained so much weight that he needed different clothing. I'm not sure that this is going to be a top priority for the courts, but I think that he was trying to make it clear that he wasn't having a good time in jail. His clothes didn't even fit. Certainly this is a big change from the large apartments and mansions that he's a part of, and this was an issue for him. The other issue was that he had no money. And recently he had two attorneys that left his case, and maybe didn't say that was part of it, but often that is what happens when attorneys leave a case. The person doesn't have money to pay them. In this situation, they said that he had an account of -13 a couple of years ago, $13. Then 2019 proved to be a little successful in terms of $200,000 in royalties, but he says that all of those monies have been depleted by giving them to attorneys and making those payments. And he certainly has a lot more to pay in terms of attorneys, so many more cases spanning 3 or 4 states. So we'll see how his financial situation turns out.
Well, I know Kelly have already said that his attorneys said they're already preparing an appeal, but how did that come about already?
Yeah, already. Before we've even started anything today, his attorneys recently talked about appeal. This had to do with media access to the courtroom. While there will be a feed for people to look at the case outside in the halls or in another room with other attorneys and the pool reporting, there won't be any reporters or media that are actually in the courtroom. So we have these open court laws that exist. And so the attorneys are saying, hey, is R. Kelly getting a fair trial if the public is not allowed to sit in physically inside of the courtroom? Does this make it fair for him? So they've talked about how they're going to start their list of appeals already, and this is going to be on their list. that he didn't get a fair trial, or perhaps there was some bias because there weren't people who were inside of the courtroom. And this is a case that's supposed to be open to the public. And this is what we normally hear from people in terms of those who are attorneys for either side. As soon as the case begins, they start their list of appeals. We saw this in the Chauvin case. Of course, a lot of people were paying attention to that and understand what was going on. We are certainly going to see that list of appeals starting today and even before today, as we saw.
Now, earlier you said they were trying to question these jury possibly to find out if they're R. Kelly fans, but you say that won't necessarily kick them off the case. So how does that play a factor if they are fans of R. Kelly's music, if they are familiar with his music, or if they just jam to a few beats once or twice before?
Right. I mean, it's okay to have listened to R. Kelly, to have gone to his concert, to even perhaps liked a particular video or have them in their Spotify playlist. But of course, during the voir dire process, during the time where the attorneys ask individuals about their feelings about the case, they're going to get down to the bottom of it and ask specifics about how much they liked R. Kelly, how long they've been following R. Kelly. Would they possibly go to a concert if he came back? Have they been to it? And they're going to get down to the nitty-gritty of, based upon the fact that you may love this man and his music and might still even play him, can you actually decide based on the evidence that is just presented in this court? Suffice it to say that most people, I'm sure, that are going to be questioned have heard the song I Believe I Can Fly and think that that's probably a positive song, not something that a lot of people are going out and hating. I can't stand that song. That's okay. But can you look at all the evidence that's presented in court and decide based upon that evidence specifically?
All right, well, we're going to find out. Candace Kelley, thank you so much. And coming up later this morning, by the way, you're going to be talking about this again and how the late singer Aaliyah will play a role in this trial. That's coming up at 9 o'clock in our 9 o'clock hour, so we don't want to miss that. Thanks, Candace.